What does it take to silence a room full of soldiers? Not rank, not volume, not the weight of metals on a chest. Sometimes it takes something much quieter, much more dangerous. The motor pool at Fort Braxton stretches like a graveyard of steel under the Georgia sun. 67 vehicles in various states of decay spread across 3 acres of cracked concrete that tells its own story of decades of heavy machinery and southern storms. Humvees with blown transmissions sit next to supply trucks that haven't seen action since Desert Storm. Mechanics move between them like medics in a field hospital, diagnosing problems that range from simple carburetor clogs to transmission failures. That would make grown men weep. The air tastes of motor oil and possibility, of broken dreams and second chances, of the eternal struggle between human ingenuity and mechanical entropy. And in the far corner, covered by a tarp that's weathered more storms than most soldiers, sits Tank 47, Alpha, the beast that broke 3 mechanic spirits, the riddle that sent 2 engineers back to civilian life, the machine that made Colonel Hayward question whether some things are just meant to stay broken. Blair Vaughn doesn't look like much at first glance at 32 years old. 5'4" in combat boots that have walked more miles than most odometers. Record. Grease under her fingernails that no amount of scrubbing ever quite removes. Hair pulled back in a ponytail that's seen better days and hotter summers. Coveralls that hang loose on her small frame, but somehow make her look more substantial, not less. She moves through the motor pool like water finding its level. Quiet, purposeful, methodical, while the other mechanics argue about torque specifications and curse at stubborn bolts. Blair simply works. Her hands speak a language older than words, fingers reading the stories that metal tells about stress and wear and the slow march of entropy that claims all machines eventually. NO radio blasting. Country music to drown out thought. No jokes shouted across the bay to break concentration. No complaints about the heat or the hours or the impossible machines they're expected to resurrect from mechanical death. Just the steady rhythm of wrench on metal. The whispered conversation between human and machine. The kind of focus that makes time disappear and problems reveal their secrets. She's been at Fort Braxton for 18 months now. Long enough for the other mechanics to stop trying to include her in their conversations about weekend plans and fantasy football. Long enough to understand that competence without volume gets overlooked in a world where the loudest voice often gets the most attention. Long enough to accept that being the best at something doesn't matter if nobody's paying attention to your work. Long enough to know that patience is sometimes the most powerful tool in any mechanic's arsenal. The morning Tank 47 Alpha arrives, changes everything. IT rolls off the transport trailer like a sleeping giant awakening from a century-long dream. 58 tons of armored fury that once dominated battlefields in 3 different countries and conflicts most people only know from history documentaries. The kind of machine that made enemy soldiers abandon their positions and run for cover when they heard its engine roaring across desert sand or jungle floor. Its hull bears scars from conflicts most people only read about in books. Bullet holes patched with welded steel. Track marks that tell stories of desperate retreats and impossible advances. Paint worn thin by sandstorms and monsoons and the relentless passage of time through war zones. The transport driver shakes his head as he unhooks the chains that held the beast secured during its journey from the previous base. Sweat drips from his forehead despite the early morning coolness. Good luck with this one, he says to Sergeant Tate. Been through 6 different bases in the last 2 years. Nobody can figure out what's wrong with her. Some of the best mechanics in the Army have tried. Smart money says she's cursed, but something's wrong with its heart. The engine turns over with all the enthusiasm of a dying whale. Coughs like an old man with pneumonia after 40 years of cigarettes. Sputters with mechanical emphysema that speaks of internal problems too complex for simple solutions. Dies with a wheeze that echoes off the motor pool walls and seems to mock every mechanic within earshot. The sound of defeat wrapped in steel and possibility. Sergeant Griffin Tate, the motor pool's loudest voice and most confident diagnostic, slaps the hull with his meaty palm and grins like he's just been handed the winning lottery ticket and a promotion simultaneously. Anyone who gets this piece of junk running gets a 3-day pass and bragging rights for life, he announces to the gathered mechanics with the enthusiasm of a carnival barker. plus first pick of assignments for the next month, and my personal recommendation for any transfer requests. The mechanics circle like sharks smelling blood in the water. Tools appear from nowhere like magic tricks. Theories fly like artillery shells. In a heated battle, bets are placed on who'll crack the code first and claim the glory. Not Blair. She stands apart from the crowd, studying the tank with eyes that see things others miss. The slight tilt of the exhaust stack that suggests internal pressure problems building like a storm. The way the tracks sit unevenly on the concrete, indicating possible suspension issues that could affect engine performance. The small puddle of hydraulic fluid that speaks volumes about seals and gaskets, and the slow leak of mechanical life that kills machines drop by drop. Her fingers itch to touch the machine, to listen to its mechanical heartbeat through her palms, to understand what story it's trying to tell through vibration and sound. But before she can step forward, the cavalry arrives. Master Sergeant Colt Knox brings 3 mechanics from different regiments, hand-picked specialists with decades of combined experience and toolboxes that cost more than most soldiers make in a year. They swagger into the motor pool like conquering heroes returning from successful campaigns, confidence radiating from every pore like heat from an overworked engine block. This is how you handle a real machine, Knox announces, shooting a dismissive glance at the Fort Braxton crew that makes several mechanics look at their boots. Not with weekend warrior tactics and wishful thinking. The specialists descend on Tank 47 Alpha like surgeons on a terminal patient whose only hope lies in their expertise. Specialist Heath Madden from the 82nd Airborne attacks the fuel system with surgical precision that borders on obsession. 23 years of experience flows through his hands like electricity through copper wire. He's the kind of mechanic other mechanics call when they're stumped by problems that defy logic and conventional wisdom. His reputation precedes him like thunder before lightning. Point 3 impossible repairs at Fort Campbell. A helicopter engine that ran backwards until Madden figured out the magnetic timing. A transport truck that consumed oil like a drunk sailor consumes whiskey until he discovered the microscopic crack in the engine block that no scanner could detect as he approaches tank 47 Alpha with the confidence of a man who's never met a machine he couldn't understand. His tools gleam like surgical instruments under the motor pool's fluorescent lights. Each wrench has its designated place. Every diagnostic device calibrated to perfection, but the tank doesn't care about his reputation. Sergeant Alara Ellis from the artillery unit focuses on electrical systems with the intensity of a watchmaker examining the gears of time itself. Her diagnostic equipment costs more than most people's cars and can trace electrical problems through circuits more complex than city power grids. She's rebuilt fire control systems for howitzers, diagnosed radar malfunctions that left entire bases blind, found shorts in wiring harnesses that other mechanics would have replaced entirely rather than repair. Her oscilloscope reads the tank's electrical heartbeat in waves of green light that dance across the screen like aurora borealis. Voltage measurements scroll past in endless streams of data that should reveal every secret the machine holds. Should being the operative word. Staff Sergeant Remy Navarro from the Armor Division knows tanks like other people know their children. He's rebuilt engines that other mechanics would scrap for parts. Transmissions that seemed beyond salvation have purred like kittens under his touch. Point 30 years of working with armored vehicles. Campaigns in 3 different theaters of operation. A mechanical intuition that borders on supernatural that he runs. His hands over Tank 47, Alpha's hull like a faith healer seeking the source of illness. His fingertips read the stories written in metal fatigue and stress fractures. His ears parse the subtle differences between healthy mechanical sounds and the whispers of impending failure. But the tank remains silent as a grave. They work with the kind of focused intensity that draws crowds like moths to flames burning bright. In darkness, officers stop by to observe the masters at work. Other mechanics pause their own repairs to watch expertise in action. Even the mess hall staff find excuses to walk past the motor pool during their breaks. Word spreads through the base like wildfire through dry grass. Point 3 Regiment's best mechanics working on one impossible problem. The legend of Tank 47 Alpha growing with each passing hour. Bets placed on which specialist will solve the mystery. First, hours pass like slow torture. Madden disassembles the fuel injection system component by component. Each part gets cleaned with solvent that could strip paint from battleships. Every connection tested with instruments that measure pressure in increments smaller than human perception. The fuel flows perfectly. Pressure readings match specifications exactly. Every injector fires with mechanical precision. Still the engine coughs and dies. Ellis maps every electrical circuit like an explorer charting unknown territories. Her multimeter probes connections that carry current measured in thousands of amperes. Wiring diagrams spread across the hood of a nearby Humvee, like battle plans drawn by generals who've never seen combat. Voltage perfect. Resistance within parameters. Ground connections solid as bedrock. The engine ignores electricity's invitation to life. Navarro performs compression tests that reveal cylinder pressures worthy of a new engine. He checks timing with instruments that measure mechanical events. In microseconds, his stethoscope listens to internal sounds that speak of perfect mechanical harmony. Everything functions exactly as designed. Every system operates within specifications. Every component performs its designated role. Yet Tank 47 Alpha sleeps like Sleeping Beauty waiting for a kiss that never comes. Days blur into nights, blur into days. The specialists work around the clock, like medical residents fighting to save a dying patient. Coffee consumption reaches dangerous levels. Meals become afterthoughts consumed while staring at diagnostic readouts that refuse to reveal their secrets. Madden starts talking to himself. Ella snaps at anyone who asks about progress. Navarro develops a twitch in his left eye that appears whenever someone mentions the tank. Still the beast remains silent. Blair continues her routine from her corner of the motor pool, fixing what's broken with the steady patience of someone who understands that machines reveal their secrets only to those who listen without demanding answers. Maintaining what's not broken because prevention beats repair every time. She watches the chaos unfold with eyes that miss nothing. The way Madden keeps returning to the same fuel injector like a tongue probing a sore tooth. How Ellis obsesses over electrical connections that are perfectly fine, testing the same circuits repeatedly, as if repetition might change the laws of physics. The growing tension in Navarro's shoulders as he runs identical diagnostic tests with the desperate hope that this time will be different. They're looking for complex problems worthy of their expertise, searching for sophisticated failures that match their reputations. Assuming that a machine this legendary must have legendary problems hiding in its mechanical depths. Sometimes the answer is simpler than anyone wants to admit. But Blair Vaughn has learned to keep her observations to herself, in a world where volume often passes for expertise and confidence trumps competence. Quiet wisdom can be invisible as morning mist burned away by the rising sun. She could speak up, should speak up, knows exactly what's wrong with Tank 47 Alpha, but she's learned that in some places, being right while female and quiet is a dangerous combination that leads to ridicule rather than recognition. Better to stay silent and let the experts exhaust their expertise before offering solutions that seem too simple to be true. The Memorial Day demonstration approaches like a storm on the horizon. 3,000 people expected. Families of fallen soldiers who deserve a ceremony worthy of their sacrifice. A brigadier general who doesn't appreciate mechanical failures and has little patience for excuses. Tank 47 Alpha is supposed to be the centerpiece, the roaring symbol of American military might, the machine that honors the dead with the thunder of perfectly tuned mechanical power. Instead, it sits silent as a tombstone while 3 regiments' worth of talent grows increasingly desperate. The base commander visits twice daily. Higher headquarters sends increasingly urgent messages. Backup plans get developed and discarded like failed battle strategies. But the specialists refuse to admit defeat. Their reputations depend on solving this puzzle. Their careers hang in the balance like autumn leaves waiting for wind. Their confidence erodes like riverbanks during spring floods. Blair works on, watches on, waits for the moment when pride finally bows to necessity, when expertise admits its limitations, when desperation overcomes prejudice, when all eyes turn to the quiet woman in coveralls who's been right all along. The moment that will change everything. The third day breaks gray and humid, with storm clouds gathering on the horizon like an omen of mechanical apocalypse. The motor pool feels different now. Tension hangs in the air thicker than Georgia humidity. And the usual morning banter dies as mechanics arrive to find the three specialists still hunched over Tank 47 Alpha like mourners at a wake. Nobody's sleeping well anymore. Master Sergeant Knox paces the perimeter of the motor pool like a caged predator, his confident swagger replaced by the jerky movements of a man watching his reputation crumble in real time. Every few minutes he approaches the tank, studies the specialist's work with increasingly desperate eyes, then retreats to make phone calls that grow shorter and more heated with each attempt. Word has reached division headquarters. Questions are being asked. Careers are being evaluated. The specialists themselves have entered that dangerous territory where expertise meets ego, and the collision creates debris that damages everything nearby. Their initial confidence has curdled into something ugly and desperate. Madden tears into the fuel system with the fury of a man who's built his identity on solving impossible problems. Parts scatter across workbenches like shrapnel from an explosion. Fuel lines get disconnected and reconnected with increasingly frantic energy. His hands shake slightly when he thinks nobody's watching. I've rebuilt fuel systems on aircraft carriers, he mutters to anyone within earshot. Helicopters that landed missing half their components. This is just a tank. Just a goddamn tank. But the tank doesn't care about his resume. Ellis has covered 3 workbenches with electrical diagrams that look like abstract art drawn by someone having a nervous breakdown. Wires snake across the concrete floor in patterns that defy logic. Her oscilloscope displays waveforms that should reveal every electrical secret, but the green traces dance meaninglessly across the screen like the vital signs of a brain dead. Patient. She started checking connections she's already checked 5 times. Testing circuits she knows are perfect. Replacing components that have nothing wrong with them. The madness of repetition, hoping for different results. Navarro has progressed beyond mechanical diagnosis into something approaching mysticism. He presses his ear against various parts of the tank's hull like a doctor listening for a heartbeat in a corpse. His hands move over the metal with the desperate tenderness of a faith healer trying to resurrect the dead through pure, 30 years of experience tells him everything should work. The evidence of his instruments confirms every system functions perfectly. Yet the tank remains silent as a judgment. The other Fort Braxton mechanics give them increasingly wide berth. What started as respectful observation has transformed into uncomfortable voyeurism. Nobody wants to witness the breakdown of legends, but nobody can look away from the spectacle of expertise eating itself alive. Sergeant Tate tries to maintain morale with jokes that fall flatter than roadkill. Don't worry, boys, he announces to no one in particular. Once these hotshots figure it out, we'll all learn something new. But his voice carries the hollow ring of forced optimism at BY noon. The motor pool has attracted visitors like a traffic accident draws rubberneckers. Officers find excuses to inspect other vehicles while stealing glances at the failing specialists. Enlisted personnel develop sudden needs for parts that require walking past Tank 47 Alpha multiple times. The whispered conversations follow predictable patterns. How long have they been at it? 3 days straight. My money says they give up by Friday. Base commander's gonna have someone's ass if this isn't fixed by Memorial Day. Blair continues her routine with the mechanical precision of a Swiss timepiece. Oil changes on schedule. Brake inspections completed according to regulation. Transmission rebuilds that purr with perfect timing when she fires them up for testing. But her attention never strays far from the drama unfolding 30 yards away. She notices details the specialists miss in their desperation. The way Madden's hands tremble slightly when he reaches for tools, betraying exhaustion that goes deeper than lack of sleep. How Ellis has started checking the same electrical connection repeatedly, like a record player stuck in a groove that plays the same few notes endlessly. The growing slump in Navarro's shoulders that speaks of confidence draining away like oil from a cracked pan. Most importantly, she notices what they're not checking, the obvious thing, the simple thing. The thing so basic that experts trained to find complex problems wouldn't think to look there. She could walk over right now. Tap one component with her wrench. Show them the answer that's been hiding in plain sight. But Blair Vaughn has learned patience from machines that don't respond to force or frustration. Engines that start only when approached with the right combination of knowledge and humility. Transmissions that reveal their secrets only to mechanics who listen more than they speak. is she's learned that timing matters, that pride must exhaust itself before wisdom can enter, that sometimes the best thing a competent person can do is wait for incompetence to run its course. The afternoon brings Colonel Hayward himself, striding through the motor pool with the purposeful gait of a man who measures problems in terms of solutions and solutions in terms of timelines. His presence transforms the casual chaos into something approaching military discipline. Specialists straighten their backs. Tools get organized. Conversations drop to whispers. What's the status, Sergeant Knox? Knox's report sounds like a medical examiner describing a particularly puzzling autopsy. Every system has been tested. All components function within specifications. The fuel flows. The electricity conducts. The mechanical timing is perfect, yet the patient refuses to live. The colonel studies Tank 47 Alpha with the expression of a man who's seen enough mechanical failures to know the difference between difficult problems and impossible ones. His eyes sweep the motor pool, taking inventory of resources both mechanical and human. His gaze lingers on Blair for a moment longer than the others. She doesn't notice because she's focused on a Humvee's differential, but several other mechanics do. They file the observation away like intelligence that might prove useful later. What about our regular mechanics? Hayward asks. Anyone else taken a look at this beast? Knox's answer comes too quickly, revealing discomfort with the question. Sir, we brought in the best specialists available. If they can't solve it, I'm not sure what our regular people could add to the effort. The colonel nods slowly, but his expression suggests the conversation isn't over. Keep me informed, Sergeant. Memorial Day is in 4 days. 3,000 people are expecting to see this machine run. Failure isn't an option we're entertaining. After Hayward leaves, the tension ratchets up another notch. The specialists work with renewed desperation, but desperation is the enemy of clear thinking. Madden starts replacing parts that tested perfectly. Ellis begins rewiring circuits that carried current flawlessly. Navarro strips components that should be left alone, that they're destroying the evidence of their own competence, erasing the proof that they diagnosed correctly, fixing things that aren't broken while ignoring what is. Blair watches the mechanical carnage with the detached fascination of someone observing a natural disaster from a safe distance. She understands what's happening because she's seen it before in different contexts. Panic makes people stupid. Desperation clouds judgment. Pride prevents the simple solutions that might actually work. The tank sits in the center of it all like a mechanical Buddha, serene in its mechanical meditation, waiting for someone to approach with the right combination of knowledge and humility, waiting for someone to see what's been obvious all along, someone who understands that the most complex problems sometimes have the simplest solutions, someone who knows that machines, like people, respond better to gentle competence than desperate force, someone who's been watching and waiting and learning while others have been performing and failing and growing increasingly frantic. The quiet woman in the corner who's been right all along. By Thursday morning, the motor pool resembles a battlefield after 3 days of futile combat. Tools scatter across workbenches like casualties of mechanical war. Parts that once fit together with engineering precision now lie disassembled in confusion that grows deeper with each desperate attempt at diagnosis. The specialists move like zombies animated by caffeine and stubborn pride. Madden's hands shake. Visibly as he reaches for components he's already examined 17 times. His fuel system expertise has devolved into compulsive repetition, checking the same connections over and over as if mechanical persistence might succeed where knowledge has failed. Ellis stares at her oscilloscope readings with the hollow gaze of someone who's seen too much combat. The green traces that should reveal electrical secrets now mock her with their perfect symmetry. Every measurement confirms what she already knows. The electrical system functions flawlessly. Navarro has entered the final stage of mechanical grief, bargaining with physics itself. He whispers to Tank 47 Alpha like a priest administering last rites to a dying parishioner, his 30 years of expertise reduced to superstition and desperate hope. Master Sergeant Knox no longer paces. He stands motionless beside the tank like a statue commemorating the death of confidence, his swagger replaced by the rigid posture of a man calculating the trajectory of his falling career. The morning briefing with Colonel Hayward carries the atmosphere of a court-martial. Memorial Day is tomorrow, gentlemen. 3,000 people Gold Star families who deserve better than excuses. A brigadier general who measures competence in results, not effort. Knox's status report sounds like a confession written in technical language designed to obscure failure behind complexity. Sir, we've performed comprehensive diagnostics on all primary systems. Fuel delivery operates within specifications. Electrical continuity tests perfect across all circuits. Mechanical timing aligns precisely with manufacturer parameters. The engine should function normally based on all available data. Should function. The two words that separate theory from reality. The gap where expertise goes to die. Colonel Hayward's response cuts through the technical smoke like a blade through silk. Sergeant Knox, I don't care what should happen. I care what will happen when I press that start button tomorrow morning. Can you guarantee this tank will start? The silence stretches like a taut wire ready to snap. No, sir, Knox finally admits. I cannot guarantee anything about this machine's performance. The colonel's eyes sweep the motor pool again, cataloging resources both utilized and ignored. His gaze settles on Blair Vaughn, who works methodically on a Humvee transmission 30 yards from the chaos surrounding Tank 47. Alpha, what about Specialist Vaughn? Has she examined this tank? The question hangs in the air like cordite smoke. After an explosion, Knox's discomfort radiates through his entire body language. His shoulders tense. His jaw clenches. His eyes dart anywhere except toward Blair's corner of the motor pool. Sir, Specialist Vaughn is highly competent with standard maintenance procedures, but this situation requires specialized expertise beyond her experience level. The words carry undertones that Blair pretends not to hear. Too complex for someone like her. Too important for weekend warrior mechanics. Too sophisticated for quiet women who fix things without fanfare. Colonel Hayward nods. Slowly, but his expression suggests the conversation has revealed more than Knox intended. I see. Well, gentlemen, you have until 0800 tomorrow. After that, we'll be discussing alternative solutions. After Hayward leaves, the motor pool settles into the oppressive quiet that precedes either breakthrough or breakdown. The specialists return to their futile labors with the mechanical persistence of wind-up toys running down. Their expertise has become their prison, trapping them inside assumptions that prevent seeing obvious solutions. Blair continues her routine, but her attention focuses increasingly on Tank 47 Alpha and the human drama surrounding its mechanical silence. She's identified the problem within hours of the tank's arrival, not through complex diagnostics or sophisticated testing. Not through instruments that cost more than annual salaries. Not through expertise accumulated over decades of specialized training. Through simple observation. Through listening to what the machine was trying to say. Through understanding that sometimes the most obvious answer is correct. The carburetor, not the fuel injection system that Madden has disassembled and rebuilt multiple times. Not the electrical circuits that Ellis has mapped with scientific precision. Not the mechanical timing that Navarro has adjusted to microscopic tolerances. The simple, old-fashioned carburetor that feeds fuel to the engine's hungry cylinders. Tank 47 Alpha is older than most people realize. Built during an era when carburetors mixed fuel and air through mechanical precision rather than electronic control. A technology so basic that modern specialists trained on computer-controlled systems might overlook it entirely. The carburetor float is stuck. A piece of debris smaller than a grain of rice has lodged in the float chamber, preventing proper fuel delivery to the engine. The fuel flows perfectly through all the lines and filters that Madden has tested. The electrical systems that Ellis has analyzed function flawlessly. The mechanical timing that Navarro has obsessed over remains precisely calibrated. But without proper carburetor function, the engine receives too little fuel to maintain combustion. It starts. Runs for a few seconds on residual fuel in the chambers. Dies when that fuel is exhausted. Simple as breathing. Obvious as sunrise. Hidden in plain sight beneath layers of modern complexity. Blair could walk over right now and fix it in 30 seconds. One tap with a wrench to jar the stuck float loose. One adjustment to restore proper fuel flow. One moment of simple competence to solve the puzzle that stumped 3 regiments worth of specialists. But she doesn't move from her corner. Not yet. Because timing matters in mechanics as much as in comedy. Because pride must complete its trajectory before wisdom can intervene. Because sometimes the best thing a competent person can do is wait for the right moment to demonstrate that competence. The afternoon drags toward evening like a wounded animal. Seeking shelter, the specialists grow increasingly frantic as deadline approaches. Knox makes phone calls that grow shorter and more desperate. Other mechanics begin discussing what happens when legends fail publicly. As the sun sets behind the motor pool's chain-link fence, casting long shadows across the graveyard of military vehicles. Blair Vaughn makes her decision. Tomorrow morning, in front of 3,000 people and a brigadier general who measures competence and results, she'll step forward. She'll approach Tank 47 Alpha with quiet confidence. She'll tap the carburetor with her wrench. She'll demonstrate that sometimes the most complex problems have the simplest solutions. And in that moment, everything will change, not just for Tank 47 Alpha, not just for the Memorial Day ceremony, not just for the specialist whose expertise has met its match, for Blair Vaughn herself, the quiet woman who's about to discover that competence, when properly timed and clearly demonstrated, speaks louder than any voice in any room. The mechanic, who's about to prove that sometimes the most dangerous person in any situation is the one everyone underestimates. The soldier who's about to show 3,000 people what it really means to serve with quiet dignity and unshakable skill. Tomorrow, Tank 47 Alpha will roar to life, and Blair Vaughn will never be invisible again. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe for more tales of quiet heroes who change everything with simple competence and perfect timing.